What's up, Gaming Nation? We are back with another 7 Days to Die video. And today we are learning the basics of forges. Now, the forges is probably one of the most, in my opinion, crucial items that you need at the beginning of the game. It's definitely something that I personally always prioritize, at least by day 3 to day 5, somewhere around there. If I can get it before my first horde night, I feel like I'm set. I feel like I'm doing good. So the forge is definitely something that I want to show you guys a little bit more about. Alright guys, so let's get into it. So, what the heck is the forge? So we're going to give you guys a complete basic tutorial on what it is, how you use it, and what that interface looks like. It was something that was a little confusing to me when I first started the game, so let me just show you guys a little bit of everything. So number one, to actually get the forge itself. The forge is actually made from the forge schematic. So the forge is something that you could find in traders. Some of the traders are going to have the forges. So the forge is actually something that if you guys are going to a trader, if you find a trader, which usually you're going to find in the first few days, let's go find this guy's forge. This is one of them that's a little harder to find. So whenever you guys find your first trader or your second, third, fourth, whatever, whenever you find a trader, there is a chance that they're going to have a forge either working or destroyed. In this case, this one is destroyed. Whenever we search the destroyed workbench, we have a small chance of finding the forge schematic, and then also, I believe, the forge itself, which can be extremely beneficial in the first few days. If you don't find one of those two items, then you will most likely find something that relates to the item. For instance, in our case, we found some brass and some short iron pipes, which is a really good find, especially in the early game. You can also unlock the forge by using your skill points. Under intellect, the first level is advanced engineering, the blacksmith. So you only need to put 1 point into it, and you can automatically craft a forge, which is actually very useful. The forge is one of the best ones to craft, so that's definitely something that I would spend a point on if you can't find the forge in the first few days or a forge schematic. But personally, I try not to spend my points on crafting things because really you're probably going to be able to find either the forge itself or the forge schematic in probably the first week or so. So once you find the forge schematic, obviously at that point you just need to use the forge schematic, which is going to teach you how to craft a forge. Whenever you look up the forge by pressing the tab button or whatever your button is to bring up the menu, you're going to be able to craft it with 50 small stone, 60 soil, 10 leather, 3 duct tape, and 3 short iron pipes. Most of these are pretty easy to find. The stone you can find by banging your head against pretty much anything in the world. The clay soil, bang your head against the ground. The leather is usually easily found by either breaking down leather items, such as dusters or hats, things like that, or you can also find it by breaking apart couches and chairs in the world. For the duct tape, you can use glue and cloth fragments. Those are both a little bit easier to find, but also, if you don't have the glue, you can actually make glue with a fireplace if you have a little beaker or a chem station with murky water and the bone. That's probably something I would save for maybe making at a trader. It's going to be a little bit easier than finding those items for yourself. So then once you actually have the forge, you can add that to your hotbar, and then you can place it down wherever you would like. So if I want it here, you place it down. Now, if you don't like the placement, if you have a land claim block, which is easily made with 5 stone, you can make a land claim block and put it down somewhere in the area. When you hold the button to activate the forge, instead, you could actually open it or take the item. So you can essentially pick up the forge without losing all the items in it and move it to somewhere else. But ideally, we don't need to do that. Let's just look at the forge. So this is the forge. This is the normal thing that you guys see. This is all here. Over here in this side, we have the tools. So that is the bellows, the anvil, and the crucible. So the tools are actually found is another thing that you can find schematics for, and you can make them, and you can also unlock them via the perks in the intelligence, the same place that you got the forge. Personally, I wouldn't recommend doing that, I wouldn't recommend spending the points because you're usually going to find the recipe or the item itself within the first week or two. So the anvil increases the forge's crafting speed. So if I was to say, hey, craft me this item, it's going to reduce that speed by 50%. The advanced bellows increases your smelting speed, which we'll talk about in just a second. The Crucible is something a lot more late game, usually at like the third, fourth, fifth, sixth weekend, whatever it is. It's definitely something that you find later in the game, but it allows you to craft steel and bulletproof glass, which is two really good late game items. So whenever you actually have these items, you can hit the shift button and click, and it shift clicks it all the way to the tools like you need it. Or if you're old school, click it, drag it into the appropriate position, just like that. And then now you'll see instead of being grayed out, there's the colors that has those tools. Don't worry, if you do get another forge later and need these, you could always take them out. But remember, that's going to make this forge have less speed or whatever the item is. So the second tab here is the fuel. So the fuel is definitely something that's not too hard to understand. Obviously, it tells you that you can use wood, which is definitely one of the most popular items. So you can take the wood, you can right-click one stack of wood to put just one item in, or you can just left-click and put all of your fuel. It's going to give you a time at how much time this is going to make the fuel run. So we can add things like wood, oil shell, coal, wood flame blocks, and gas cans. I wouldn't recommend using gas or the oil shell or the coal. I would stick with the wood because it's the easiest resource to collect, and you'll notice that the wood, to my opinion anyways, is usually the easiest thing to use. Now, whenever you're ready, you can select turn on if you have fuel, and it'll start forging the fire. If we notice now, the fire's on. Whenever you're ready to turn it off, if it's not actually doing anything, I would recommend turning it off at most times. Having the forge, because it's a lit fire, just like the campfire, it is and it could attract zombies and then also screamers, and possibly hordes later in the game, roaming hordes that is. So don't leave your forges going all the time unless you absolutely need to. But what I like to do personally is I'll fill it up, I'll turn it on, and then leave for the day. And then when I come back, it smelted all of my items, crafted all my items without me having to worry about zombies showing up. Because if the zombies were queued to your area and you're not there, really they're not going to break down your building just to get to your forge. So the next area is the smelting section, and it actually lists all the different items that you can smelt in the forge, which is basically just taking the raw resource and smelting it down. This is really nice because it keeps track of all the items. For instance, iron, brass, the lead, sand, stone, and clay, which is what we have right here. So all you have to do is select the item, add it into these two spots. So for instance, let's start with stone and iron. Right now it's not going to do anything because the forge is not on. So if we turn on the forge, you're going to notice these numbers start to slowly go up. So what it's doing is it's taking our stone and smelting it down and giving it to us in the forge. And if you notice on this side as well, it actually opened up some more resource items. So this is some of the items that you can make with what you have in your forge. So for instance, if I select the cement costs 12 stone to make 1 cement. So here it says craft, so I can take my stone, which I have now 105, and I can say craft. Down here it's going to take 3 seconds, 2 seconds, and it crafted out 1 cement. And it used my stone that I've been putting in here. Now, this does not use your stone that you have smelting. It uses the stone that you actually have smelted, which is the number down here. So for instance, if I want to do this, I can only make 12 right now because I only have that much stone left. Once this starts going, it'll go down. If you turn off the forge, it's going to stop smelting and is also going to stop your queue from working. So you want to make sure that you leave this on for long enough, at least for 14 seconds, for this to smelt or for this to craft all the cement that you want. But if you have a lot of supplies in here, One thing that I like to do is, for instance, if we wanted to just focus on stone, we can split our stone stack and put some stone here, and turn it on. That's going to smelt our stone double as fast, but obviously you're only getting one resource, but it's going to make the stone go through a lot faster. Another thing that you can do, which is really nice to be able to do, is when you have items, and you can actually use the items directly into the forge to smelt them down. For instance, this short iron pipe, it's made of iron. If we take the short iron pipe and we put it in here and we turn on, it's actually going to start smelting down the short iron pipe into iron. You can do the same thing with items like the iron knuckles, for instance. The items that you're smelting have a lot higher of a time to actually break down, but they do give you a good amount of resources. However, make sure that you're not smelting something that you can sell for a good chunk, like this one selling for $264. Maybe I want to keep that instead, and I want to use this brass candlestick, and this can smelt down into brass into the forge. Other items that I like to use are things like lead fishing weights and tin cans, things like that. They're all the items that you can scrap in your inventory. So for instance, I can take this and I can scrap it in my inventory, and it's going to give me a few pieces of lead. But if you smelt it down, it's going to give you a little bit more lead than it is if you just scrap it in your inventory. Using the resource section over here, this is going to be the easiest way for you to identify all the different materials that you can make. The items that are in bright white and actually bolded are the items, of course, that you're able to make. So for instance, in my case, the cement. But if I go over here, I can look up different items in here, different weapons, different tools. So for instance, if I wanted to make buckshot, it's going to give me the recipe. I need a little bit more lead and a little bit more clay to make that item. Now, this is something that I didn't understand when I first started, so I want to make sure that I explain this. If you guys have, for instance, the iron, you have 257 iron that's in your forge. Now, I need the iron. I want it back. What you can do is over here, you can choose whatever item you want, 257 of them, craft, and it does the exact opposite of what the smelting does. It will take the items out of the forge, if you notice here, and it's going to give it back to me in my area here. Again, if you turn it off, it's going to stop that process. But remember, I would only recommend doing this if you guys do not need those items in there. So for instance, if you started with one forge and you have all of your material in there, and then you go and build a second forge, maybe you want to take out all the brass from one and make it another one. Which actually leads us to the next point. I want to show you guys this. Personally, what I like to do is I like to have two forges. One forge just specific for cement. So what I'll do is I'll have it smelting just stone, and that's it. And what it does is it pumps out cement for me literally 24/7. As much stone as I can put in, give me all of the cement. That's what I wanted to focus on. Because for me personally, I like having my base built off cement, and that's definitely one of the first things I focus on, is getting one of those up and running. A lot of people will take another forge and make it just specifically for the ammo production. So for instance, you want to break down brass, and you can make bullet casings. You can make bullet casings, and then also the lead with the clay, and make bullet tips. This is definitely something that I see a lot of people doing. The next thing, and probably one of the biggest things that a lot of people will use the forge for, is the forged iron. Forged iron is used in a lot of recipes to make almost everything in the game that is big. For instance, the armor, and then all of those items as well. So definitely having a lot of iron in your forge is going to be a huge thing to keep up on. The clay is also another very important thing to have in your forge. So remember, if you have the ability to make multiple forges, personally that's my recommendation, because you can have multiple things crafting, multiple things smelting all at once. It will raise your heat level, which again, like I said before, is attracting zombies and attracting screamers. But when you're able to place 3 different forges, you're probably high enough level that you're not too worried about a small wandering horde or a few screamers every once in a while. Alright guys, that was my forge guide. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. If you guys have any questions, leave them down there as well. If you liked the video, drop a like. If you guys loved it, please consider subscribing. And thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.